and welcome to this Eating Together Potato Cake short and simple guide. What we're going to do is learn how to make the most fabulous potato cakes possible. So any of those potato left over, let them reach that kind of higher stage to become a potato cake. So as you can see here from the video, we've got potatoes. They must be cold. If you use hot potatoes for this, they'll get really starchy and gelatinous. So what you want to do is get 2 eggs, put them in a large bowl. Be generous with the salt. I'm adding a little bit of thyme here. You can add a little bit of dill. You can freeze herbs if you've got any left over, so remember to do that. It's quite difficult sometimes to get your mixture done, especially if your hands get a little bit sore. It can be really difficult to mix the potatoes and then add everything in. So you're doing yourself a favor here by doing this mix up first. So as a general rule, I'd follow that one. So get your eggs mixed up. We're adding in some plain flour. It's a much better idea to sieve it rather than just chuck it in the bowl as I'm doing here, but we get away with it with potato cakes. So mix the flour in and until that's like a nice consistency. And what you want to do then is slowly add your potato. So I've added a little bit of oil here, and I do that because oil basically is it's a transport system for flavor. And when you add a little bit to something like this, it helps it to crisp on the outside. I often add a little bit of sunflower oil to my batter and you just get a much crispier finish. So it's no harm to add a little bit in there. So I've almost got to that kind of mixture point now. Look at it. It's lovely. So that's good to go. What you want to do now, like I said, is slowly add the spuds. So you know the way sometimes you can have potatoes that you've got 1 or 2 left, adding a little bit of pepper there. You've got 1 or 2 left in the bag. It's always wise if you're making some potatoes for dinner to add a few more so you have those leftovers because they're cooked and then they're good to go. This dish really you can knock together in seconds. So I've added a little pepper there. So having a few potatoes in your fridge means that you can, if you master this simple mix, which I promise will not be difficult or onerous, if you master this, you can then start playing around with your potato cakes. And that's one of the reasons I love cooking so much, is because quite fussy with my food and textures. So when you're cooking something from scratch, you can decide how salty you want it. You can, and actually you can tolerate a lot more salt when you're not buying processed food. So you can really tailor it to your own taste in terms of texture, in terms of the kind of herbs that you put in there. You could make these spicy if you wanted to, but you would have to fry those spices up or they'd be just like a colorant rather than a flavor. So as you can see, I am slowly blending in the potatoes, and what I'm going to do with this particular batch is leave them a little bit lumpy for a bit of extra flavor, sorry, for a bit of extra texture, and they're a kind of fairly robust potato cake in that case. And leaving them fairly lumpy also means that some of those lumpy bits have edges and they brown in a really nice way, so you get a really super crispy finish. And the lumps also let a little bit of air through the cake. If it's too dense, it's quite hard to get all the heat through and get that really nice fluffy warm finish. So yeah, you just don't want to stress. Don't stress your potato cakes. That's always my advice. So here I am now getting the rest of those potatoes in, and I'm going to mix them through. So there's a couple of ways that you can cook these. You can shallow fry them, and that's it. It takes just like 4 minutes, I think, on the hob. So if you do choose to shallow fry them, a mistake that everybody makes is they tend to put oil in a cold pan, and then that oil, it's got no heat, so the oil just basically sits in the pan, and then when it eventually gets hot, it's going to have already burnt, so it's not a great way to start. So if you remember, your first pancake is often a disaster, right? So you can save that first pancake by making sure that you heat your pan really well before you put your oil in. You get a better outcome in cooking, and yeah, it's sometimes faster and you get a better finish as well, and things are much less likely to stick. So I've gone off now my spuds, and what we're going to do is we're going to use spoons and we're going to make what they call in the business kernels out of these. So the other thing you can do is choose the kind of size that you want to serve them. So I needed to cook these fairly sharpish because the group that were in doing the training session with me were starving at this stage and they just really wanted their lunch. So if I wanted to make larger ones, the cook time would have been much longer, and frankly I didn't really want to risk it, to be fair. So I thought I'd make much smaller ones using a serving spoon and a soup spoon to shape them. They're a bit too doughy to handle, so if you can manage two spoons, that will really help you to kind of just get them in the pan. And you don't need to make fancy shapes with them. You can be, they sort of balance themselves out. So I'm just adding the last bit of seasoning here, and it's really important to remember with these kind of carbs. So anything like potatoes, the falafels that we made last week, and pasta. If you don't season it really well when you're cooking it, it's really hard to get that great flavor once it's cooked, because starch absorbs all of that salt. So when you put a fair bit of salt in when when you're cooking it, it can absorb it, and then it's got a lot more flavor. And the rule in Italy around cooking pasta is the water that you cook it in should be as salty as the Mediterranean. So I dare you. I mean, it looks quite excessive, but I promise you, you get like much better pasta. So yeah, give that one a try. And using leftover mashed potatoes is such a helpful thing, because it means that you basically got 2 or 3 meals because you've cooked from scratch. So what I'd advise you to do is really try things out. I started adding lemon juice and butter. Sorry, lemon juice and olive oil to my mashed potatoes with plenty of salt, and the flavor was just exceptional. And I thought, this is a whole new way to have mashed potatoes. So trying stuff out is really good. So here you can see I'm kind of making the shape, patting it down a little bit, so you've got a bit of some kind of semblance of a cake, I suppose. And yeah, I'm going to pop it in the pan. So I just set the camera up on the prep station so you can't see the actual cooking, but in a second you'll see what these look like in the pan. I have to say, some of the women at the original session hadn't tried potato cakes before, and I'm rather pleased that this was their inaugural potato cake tasting. So what I've seen, like obviously what's happened here is I've done a tester one, and I can tell that the consistency is not quite right. It needs another bit of flour. So a warning, with flour and with everything in life, you can add more, but you can't take it away. So when you start adding flour to like mashed potatoes or something like your falafel, what you want to do is add little bits at a time and keep playing around with the consistency, and add the flour until it's kind of the consistency that you want. And basically what you need to do is hold itself together. There you go. That's what they're looking like now after a couple of minutes. But you really need them to like be able to hold their form. If they're not able to like stand up on the spoon, it's too runny. However, be careful not to overdo the flour, because if you overdo them, suddenly you've got a potato cake that's like a brick, and you don't want things that are like too dense. And the flour overpowers some of the other flavors, and they're just a bit heavier than you might want them to be. So a little at a time. So I'm cleaning down my prep station, and now what we're going to do is we're going to take these potato cakes to another level. And here, what I will do is I am going to dress the plates, and that's like a fancy way of saying I'm putting salt on first. So a little bit of salt, a little bit of lemon juice, possibly a little bit of olive oil, and that just kind of means that your plate is nicely dressed and it's seasoned the whole way across. It also enables you to get different little flavors and textures, and of course the other thing is a bonus, it kind of looks nice. So what we're going to do, yeah, a little bit of salt, a little bit of lemon juice. You can put a little bit of pepper on there. If you prefer lime juice, that's great. You can also use limes. And if you want to get the best value out of your citrus, because the price of lemon and limes has increased quite a bit, I'd highly recommend you to always give them a good roll. So give them a good old roll on your worktop before you cut them open, and they'll surrender an awful lot more juice for you. and yeah, they'll just be easier to extract the juice. So you can see here, these are the potato cakes, and what you want with them is a nice deep crunchy outside, and that's where you need your oil spot on when you're putting them in the pan. Otherwise they just, a greasy potato cake, it's something that should be illegal. It's really unpleasant. So with a hot oil, all that starch then seals itself up in the potato, and you're on to a good start. And you'll know immediately in the pan if it's all gone to Nelly, because they'll just explode all over themselves, and it's not very pleasant, and the oil's unusable. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a potato cake stack, so that kind of flavors blend together, and you just get a bit more out of the enjoyment of the potato cake. A little bit more salt going on there. So what I did was I dry fried some halloumi cheese. You can add just a tiny little bit of oil to this, but with halloumi again, you need a seriously hot pan or it sticks and burns, and also that's not great. Oh, potato cake down, potato cake down. So these stacks mean that you can present them on a plate in a really nice way as well. It's quite a simple food, but there's you know, simple food doesn't mean it can't have great accompaniments, and it's not an expensive meal. So it's just a great way to enjoy it. And then to get a little bit of boom flavor in here, what we've done is we've added fried eggs, and one of my yolks burst, and I'm horrified. Horrified. So these, I asked the team, they all wanted really crispy bottoms. So pan up very high, eggs in, boom, and they just take seconds. Another variation of this, of course, would be some spring greens. You can put some bacon on there. And what we're going to be doing this week at the Thursday meals, we're going to be adding poached eggs on the top of this, which is quite a different finish there, really. And we'll put some garlic. We have roast garlic puree to go with this as well. So we just put big garlic bulbs in the oven with some oil and salt, and left them in there for a while. And when they're nice and soft, take them out, let them cool down. Make sure you let the steam out, always let the steam out. And then you just cut the top off the bulb where you're like cutting right across all of the clothes, and then boom, there you have it, paste, which is delicious. I'm about to add the paste. So we've dressed the plate quite a bit. We have fresh thyme on here. I've got a bit of, it's always good to salt the yolk of your egg when it's cooked, because the flavour can be quite dense. So we've got salt, fresh thyme, which I think is just one of those gorgeous herbs I'll never get tired of. Putting a little bit of olive oil on the plate. The potato cakes could be a little bit dry, and I tell you, if you make slightly thinner ones, serving them with butter, it's really delicious. I'll be salivating too much to finish this commentary. So here we are adding the lemon, and lemon is a lovely thing because it helps to cut through the fat, and there's a few fats in this dish. So that's it, all dressed up and almost ready to go. We've just got to add the garlic. So from a few humble potatoes and a couple of eggs, we've got this rather splendid dish. It's a real joy, and the great thing about it is you can have this for breakfast, you can have it for lunch, and if you want to have it with dinner, we're going to be serving it with some like spring greens that have been done, tossed over in some lime, lemon and olive oil with a really nice finish of Maldon salt. So just to get, yeah, here we are. This is called flavor boosting. So we're now adding some whole grain mustard, and that will give a really nice hot flavor as well. That will go nice with the sort of more neutral. You can think of your potato cakes as a slightly more neutral vehicle for all the lovely salt and niceness. So there you have it. That's it. That is our potato cake offering for yourselves. We do cooking lessons exactly like this every Tuesday at the Tuesday Drop-In. If you'd like to come along, we basically sit together with some random ingredients and make something delicious out of it and offer it out to everybody in the cafe. All of the meals that we make will be super healthy, amazingly delicious, and they will be easy to source and not expensive on the pocket, and that's the goal. So feel free to join us. It will be great to see you any Tuesday, 10 to 12. We'd be delighted to see you in the kitchen. We hope that you've enjoyed the video, and thanks for taking the time to watch. Enjoy cooking, and if you're good to your food, it will be good to you.